When the hour had come, Jesus took a place at the table with the apostles. Jesus said to them, "I've longed to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. I tell you, I will not eat it again until everything is fulfilled in the reign of God." Then taking a cup of wine, Jesus gave thanks and said,
"Take this and share it among you. I tell you, I will not drink wine from now on until the reign of God comes."
Then Jesus took bread and gave thanks for it, broke it and gave it to them, saying,
"This is my body, which will be given to you. Do this in remembrance of me."
Jesus did the same with the cup after supper and said,
"This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which will be poured out for you. Look, the hand of my betrayer is at this table with me. The chosen one is following the appointed course, but woe to the person by whom that one is betrayed."
Then they began to argue among themselves as to which of them would do such a deed. Another dispute arose among them about who would be regarded as the greatest. But Jesus said to them,
"Earthly rulers domineer over their people. Those who exercise authority over them are called their benefactors. This must not happen to you. Let the greatest among you be like the youngest. Let the leader among you become the follower. For who is the greater? The one who reclines at a meal or the one who serves it? Isn't it the one reclining at table? Yet here I am among you as the one who serves you. You are the ones who have stood by me faithfully in trials. Just as God has given me dominion, so I give it to you. In my reign you will eat and drink at my table, and you'll sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Simon, Simon, Satan has demanded that you be sifted like wheat, but I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail. You, in turn, must give strength to your sisters and brothers."
"Rabbi, with you I'm prepared to face imprisonment and even death."
"I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you'll have denied 3 times that you know me." When I sent you off without purse, traveling bag, or sandals, were you in need of anything?
No, nothing.
Now, however, the one who has a purse had better carry it. The same with a traveling bag. And if they don't have a sword, they must sell their cloaks and buy one. For I tell you, what was written in Scripture must be fulfilled in me. The suffering servant is counted among criminals. For whatever refers to me must be fulfilled."
Look, Rabbi, here are 2 swords.
That is enough.
Then Jesus went out and made his way as usual to the Mount of Olives. The disciples accompanied him. When they reached the place, Jesus said to them,
Pray that you not be put to the test.
Then Jesus withdrew about a stone's throw from them, knelt down and prayed.
Abba, if it's your will, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done.
When Jesus rose from prayer, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, exhausted with grief. He said to them,
Why do you sleep? Wake up and pray that you not be subjected to the trial.
While Jesus Jesus was still speaking, a crowd suddenly appeared with Judas, one of the 12, at the head. Judas came over to Jesus to embrace him, but Jesus said,
Judas, are you betraying me with the chosen one with a kiss?
Those who were around Jesus, realizing what was going to happen, said,
Rabbi, should we strike them with our swords?
One of them struck the attendant of the high priest, cutting off an ear.
Stop! No more of this.
Then Jesus touched the attendant's ear and healed it. But to those who had come out against him, the chief priest, the chiefs of the temple guard, and the elders, Jesus said,
Why do you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a robber? I was with you in the temple every day, and you could have laid hands on me any time you wanted. But this is your hour, the triumph of darkness.
They arrested Jesus and led him away, arriving at the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance and sat down in the midst of those who had kindled a fire in the courtyard and were sitting around it. One of the high priest's attendants saw him sitting there at the fire, and she stared at him and said,
"This one was with Jesus too."
I don't know him.
A little later, someone else noticed Peter and remarked,
You're one of them too.
but Peter said,
No, I'm not.
About an hour later, someone else insisted,
Surely this fellow was with them too. He even talks like a Galilean.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Just then, as Peter was still speaking, a rooster crowed. Jesus turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered Jesus saying, Before a rooster crows today, you'll deny me 3 times. Peter went out and wept bitterly. Meanwhile, those who held Jesus in custody were amusing themselves at his expense. They blindfolded him and slapped him and taunted him, and they hurled many other insults at him.
Play the prophet. Tell us, who struck you, huh?
At daybreak, the Sanhedrin, which was made up of the elders of the people, the chief priests and the religious scholars, assembled again. Once they had brought Jesus before the council, they said,
Tell us, are you the Messiah?
If I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I question you, you won't answer. But from now on, the chosen one will have a seat at the right hand of the power of God.
Then all of them said, So, you are God's own?
Your own words have said it.
What do we need of witnesses? We have heard it from his own mouth.
Then the whole assembly arose and led Jesus to Pilate. They began to accuse Jesus by saying, We found this one subverting our nation, opposing the payment of taxes to Caesar, and even claiming to be Messiah, a king.
Are you king of the Jews?
You have said it.
Then Pilate reported to the chief priests and the crowds.
I find no guilt in him.
but they insisted. He stirs up the people wherever he teaches, through the whole of Judea, from Galilee to Jerusalem.
On hearing this, Pilate asked whether Jesus was a Galilean, and learning that Jesus was from Herod's jurisdiction, sent Jesus off to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at the time.
Now at the sight of Jesus, Herod was very pleased. From the reports he had heard about Jesus, he'd wanted for a long time to see him. Herod hoped to see Jesus perform some miracle. Herod questioned him at great length, but Jesus wouldn't answer. The chief priests and religious scholars stood there, accusing Jesus vehemently. So Herod and the soldiers treated Jesus with contempt and ridicule, put a magnificent robe upon him, and sent him back to Pilate. Herod and Pilate, who had previously been set against each other, became friends that day.
Pilate then called together the chief priests, the ruling class, and the people, and said to them,
You have brought this person before me as someone who incites people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for any charge against him arising from your allegations. Neither has Herod, for Jesus has been sent back to us. Obviously, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish Jesus, but then I will release him.
Pilate was obligated to release one prisoner to the people at festival time. The whole crowd cried out as one,
Take him away! We want Barabbas!
Barabbas had been imprisoned for starting a riot in the city and for murder. Pilate wanted to release Jesus, so he addressed them again, but they shouted back,
Crucify him! Crucify him!
Yet a third time, Pilate spoke to the crowd.
What wrong has this Jesus done? I found nothing that calls for death. Therefore, I'll have him flogged, and then I'll release him.
But they demanded that Jesus be crucified, and their shouts increased in volume. Pilate decided that their demands should be met. So he released Barabbas, the one who had been imprisoned for rioting and murder, and Jesus was handed over to the crowd.
As they led Jesus away, they seized Simon, a Cyrenian who was just coming in from the fields, and forced him to carry the cross behind Jesus. A large crowd was following, many of them women who were beating their breasts and wailing for him. At one point, Jesus turned to these women and said,
Daughters of Jerusalem, don't weep for me. Weep rather for yourselves and for your children. The time is coming when it will be said, Blessed are the childless, the wombs that have never given birth, and the breasts that have never nursed. Then people will say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, Cover us up. For if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?
Two others were also led off with Jesus, criminals who were to be put to death. When they had reached the place called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there, together with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said,
Abba, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Then they divided his garments, rolling dice for them. The people stood there watching. The rulers, however, jeered him and said,
He saved us. Let him save himself if he is really the Messiah of God, the chosen one.
The soldiers also mocked him. They served Jesus sour wine and said,
If you're really the king of the Jews, save yourself.
There was an inscription above Jesus that read, This is the King of the Jews. One of the criminals who hung there beside him insulted Jesus too, saying,
Are you really the Messiah? Then save yourself and us.
But the other answered the first with a rebuke.
Don't you even fear God? We are only paying the price for what we have done, but this one has done nothing wrong. Jesus, remember me when you come into your glory.
The truth is, Today you will be with me in paradise.
It was about noon, and darkness fell on the whole land until 3 in the afternoon, because of an eclipse of the sun. Then the curtain in the sanctuary was torn in two, and Jesus uttered a loud cry and said,
Abba, into your hands I commend my spirit.
Saying this, Jesus breathed for the last time. The centurion who saw this glorified God, saying,
Surely this one was innocent.
When the crowds that had gathered for the spectacle saw what had happened, they returned home, beating their breasts and weeping. All the acquaintances of Jesus and the women who had come with him from Galilee stood at a distance, looking on.
There was a member of the Sanhedrin named Joseph, who had not consented to their action. Joseph was from Arimathea and lived in anticipation of the reign of God. He approached Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Joseph took the body down, wrapped it in fine linen, and laid it in a tomb cut out of rock, where no one else had yet been laid. It was preparation day, and Sabbath was about to begin.
The women who accompanied Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph, saw the tomb, and watched as the body was placed in it. Then they went home to prepare the spices and ointments, but they rested on the Sabbath according to the law. Here ends the reading of the Gospel. This is the good news of Jesus Christ.
Thanks
Thanks be to God. Amen.